Subscribe to my YouTube channel for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. The rain drummed against Emma's apartment window, like restless fingers, each drop carrying whispers of the storm that had been brewing all evening. She sat curled on her couch, a half-empty cup of chamomile tea growing cold beside her, when her phone buzzed against the coffee table. The blue glow illuminated her face as she glanced at the screen, expecting perhaps a goodnight message from her sister or a late-night work email. Instead, she saw a name that made her heart skip in a way. She'd spent 3 years trying to forget. David Chun. Incoming call. Emma stared at the phone, her finger hovering over the screen. David never called her, not directly, not without Sarah, her best friend, and his wife being part of the conversation. The three of them had maintained a careful balance for years now, ever since that one night when boundaries had blurred and hearts had spoken truths that should have remained buried. The phone continued to ring, and Emma found herself transported back to a time when seeing David's name on her screen would have filled her with pure joy rather than this complex mixture of longing and fear. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice carefully neutral. "David, is everything okay?" There was a pause, filled only with the sound of rain and what seemed like heavy breathing on the other end. When David finally spoke, his voice was rough, as if he'd been crying. "Emma, I need to talk to someone. She's not here." Emma's heart clenched. Sarah had been her best friend since college, the maid of honor at the wedding Emma had attended with a smile plastered on her face while her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Sarah, who had no idea that her husband and best friend shared a connection that went deeper than friendship, a connection that had been carefully buried but never truly forgotten. "Where is she?" Emma asked, settling back into her couch and pulling a blanket around her shoulders. "Business trip. Chicago. She left this morning," and David's voice broke slightly. "I'm sorry for calling so late. I know this is strange, but I couldn't sleep, and I kept thinking about about us. About that night." Emma closed her eyes, her free hand gripping the blanket tighter. That night, 3 years ago at Sarah's birthday party, when David had found Emma crying on the balcony after a particularly brutal breakup. He'd offered comfort. She'd leaned into his warmth, and for one perfect, terrible moment they'd almost kissed. Almost. Crossed a line that would have changed everything forever. "David," Emma whispered, "we agreed we wouldn't talk about that night." I know we did. But Emma, I can't keep pretending it didn't happen. I can't keep pretending that I don't. Think about you. About what we almost had." Emma's breath caught in her throat. This was dangerous territory, a path they'd both agreed never to walk down. Sarah was sleeping peacefully in a hotel room hundreds of miles away, trusting them both, and here they were, dancing around the edges of betrayal. "You're married to my best friend," Emma said, though even to her own ears, the words lacked conviction. "I am," David agreed, his voice heavy with pain. "And I love her. I do. But Emma, you have to know that what I feel for you, it's different. It's something I've never felt before, not even with Sarah." Emma stood up abruptly, pacing to the window where the rain continued its relentless assault. Her reflection stared back at her, showing a woman caught between loyalty and longing, between what was right and what felt inevitable. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can't call me in the middle of the night and say things like that. It's not fair to Sarah. It's not fair to me. And it's not fair to you." "Life isn't fair," David replied, and Emma could hear the pain in his voice. "If life were fair, I would have met you first. If life were fair, I wouldn't be married to one woman while dreaming about another. The words hung in the air between them like a confession that couldn't be taken back. Emma pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching the rain blur the city lights below. David, she said finally, tell me what happened. Why are you calling me tonight? There was another long pause, and when David spoke again, his voice was raw with emotion. Sarah and I had a fight before she left. A big one. She accused me of being distant, of not being present in our marriage. She said she feels like I'm somewhere else, like my heart isn't really with her. Emma's stomach twisted. And what did? You say? I couldn't say anything, Emma, because she's right. My heart isn't fully with her. Part of it has been with you for 3 years, and I don't know how to get it back. The admission hit Emma like a physical blow. She'd spent 3 years trying to move on, dating other men, throwing herself into her work as a graphic designer, traveling to distant places to try to forget the way David's eyes had looked into hers that night on the balcony. But nothing had worked. Every relationship had ended the same way, with her partner accusing her of being emotionally unavailable, of holding back some essential part of herself. Because she had been. That part of her heart had been locked away, belonging to a man she couldn't have. Emma? David's voice called her back to the present. Are you still there? I'm here, she whispered. I need to see you. The words sent a jolt of electricity through her entire body. David, no, we can't. Sarah is in Chicago until Thursday. She doesn't have to know. But I would know, Emma said, though even as she spoke, she could feel her resolve wavering. We would know. Emma, please. I'm not asking for anything to happen. I just need to see you, to talk to you face to face. I feel like I'm drowning in this marriage, and you're the only person who understands. Emma leaned against the window, her breath fogging the glass. She thought about Sarah, about their friendship, about the trust that would be broken if she agreed to this. But she also thought about the 3 years of suppressed feelings, the dreams that had haunted her nights, the way her heart had never quite healed from that almost kiss. Where are you? She asked, knowing that the question itself was a surrender. I'm in my car. I've been driving around for hours. I'm parked outside your building. Emma's eyes widened and she pressed her face to the window, looking down at the street below. Through the rain, she could make out the familiar silhouette of David's car, the headlights cutting through the darkness like beacons. You're crazy, she breathed. I know. But Emma, I couldn't stay away. Not tonight. Not when everything feels like it's falling apart. Emma stared down at the car, knowing that David was looking up at her window. The rain continued to fall, and she felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, one step away from changing everything forever. Come up, she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. Emma, just come up. We'll talk. Nothing more. Just ... talk. She hung up the phone and stood frozen by the window, watching as David's car door opened, and his familiar figure emerged into the rain. He ran toward the building, and Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as she waited for the knock that would change everything. When it came, soft and hesitant, Emma took a deep breath and opened the door. David stood there, soaked from the rain, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his eyes holding a mixture of hope and desperation that made Emma's knees weak. Hi, he said simply. Hi, she replied, stepping aside to let him in. David entered her apartment, bringing with him the scent of rain and something uniquely him that Emma had never forgotten. He stood in her living room, looking around at the space that had become her sanctuary, at the paintings on the walls and the books scattered on every surface. You changed the furniture, he observed. And Emma realized he was remembering the last time he'd been here. 3 years ago, when he'd helped her move a heavy bookshelf. I needed a change, she said, wrapping her arms around herself. They stood there in awkward silence, the weight of 3 years of unspoken words pressing down on them. Emma gestured toward the couch, and David sat down, his movements careful and uncertain. Do you want some tea? Emma asked, desperate for something to do with her hands. Sure. Emma busied herself in the kitchen, her hands shaking slightly as she prepared the tea. She could feel David's eyes on her, could sense the tension radiating from him even across the room. When she returned with 2 steaming cups, she found him staring at a framed photo on her side table, a picture of Emma and Sarah from their college graduation, their arms around each other, bright smiles on their faces. She loves you so much, David said quietly, accepting the tea. I know, Emma replied, sitting down on the opposite end of the couch. I love her too. That's what makes this so complicated. David set down his cup and turned to face her fully. Emma, I need you to know something. What I feel for you ... It's not just attraction. It's not just some fantasy. I think I'm in love with you. I think I've been for 3 years. Emma's breath caught. David, please don't say that. Why not? Because it's true. Because it makes this real. Because it makes this impossible, Emma said, her voice breaking slightly. Because I love Sarah, and I love you. And I don't know how to reconcile those 2 things. You love me. David's voice was barely a whisper. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, taking in the face that had haunted her dreams for 3 years. His dark eyes, the slight scar on his chin from a childhood accident, the way his hair fell across his forehead when he was nervous. She had memorized every detail, carried them with her through every lonely night and every failed relationship. Yes, she admitted, the word escaping like a sigh. I love you. I've loved you since that night on the balcony, maybe even before that. But David, love isn't always enough. Sometimes love means letting go. David moved closer to her on the couch, and Emma felt her resolve crumbling. What if we don't have to let go? What if we could find a way to be together? How? By betraying Sarah? By destroying her trust? Her marriage, her friendship? Is that the kind of love you want to build our relationship on? David's face crumpled, and Emma saw the pain she'd been feeling reflected in his eyes. I don't know, he admitted. I just know that I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending to be happy in a marriage when part of me is always thinking about you. Emma reached out and took his hand, feeling the familiar jolt of electricity that had always existed between them. Then maybe you need to figure out what you really want. Not just what you want with me, but what you want for your life. I want you, David said simply. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to take you on trips to places you've never been. I want to support your art, to be there when you're struggling with a difficult project. I want to grow old with you, Emma. I want all of it. The words painted a picture so vivid that Emma could almost see it. A life where she and David were together, where they could love each other openly and honestly. But the image was tainted by the shadow of Sarah, by the knowledge of what their happiness would cost. And what about Sarah? Emma asked. What about the woman who loves you, who married you, who trusts you? David's grip on her hand tightened. Sarah deserves someone who can love her completely. Someone who won't spend their marriage thinking about another woman. Maybe if I were honest with her, if I told her the truth, she could find that person. You want to tell her about us? I want to tell her about me, about how I feel, about how I can't be the husband she deserves. I don't want to hurt her, Emma. But I can't keep living a lie. Emma pulled her hand away and stood up, pacing to the window again. The rain had started to slow, but the storm inside her was just beginning. David, if you tell Sarah about your feelings for me, it will destroy her. It will destroy our friendship. It will destroy everything. And if I don't tell her, I'll destroy myself, David said, standing up to face her. And I'll destroy my marriage anyway, because I can't fake happiness forever. Emma turned to look at him, seeing the torment in his eyes. What are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to take a chance on us. I'm asking you to believe that what we have is worth fighting for. And if we're wrong, if we hurt everyone we love and it doesn't work out between us. David crossed the room to stand beside her, his hand coming up to cup her face gently. Then at least we'll know we tried. At least we'll know we didn't spend our whole lives wondering, what if? Emma leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his palm against her cheek. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I, David admitted. But I'm more scared of losing you forever, of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been. Emma looked into his eyes, seeing her own fears and hopes reflected there. The rain outside had stopped, and the city lights twinkled like stars beyond the window. In that moment, with David's hand on her face, and his heart laid bare before her, Emma felt the last of her defenses crumble. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, I'll take the chance. I'll believe in us. But David, we have to do this right. We have to be honest with Sarah, even if it hurts her. We owe her that much. David's face lit up with a mixture of relief and joy. Are you sure? No, Emma said honestly. I'm not sure about anything, but I know that I love you. And I know that I can't keep living in this limbo. If we're going to do this, we have to be brave enough to face the consequences. David pulled her into his arms, and Emma felt like she was coming home after a long journey. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. I love you, he whispered into her hair. I love you too, she replied, the words feeling both natural and revolutionary. They held each other in the quiet of Emma's apartment, both knowing that they were standing at the beginning of a new chapter, one that would be filled with challenges and difficult conversations, but also with the possibility of a love that had been waiting 3 years to be born. As dawn began to break over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Emma and David made plans. They would wait for Sarah to return from Chicago. They would sit her down together and tell her the truth about their feelings. They would face whatever consequences came from their honesty. It wouldn't be easy. Hearts would be broken, friendships would be tested, and the comfortable world they'd all built together would be shattered. But sometimes, Emma thought as she looked into David's eyes, love required destruction before it could create something new. No matter what happens, David said, his voice strong and certain, I want you to know that these feelings I have for you, they're real. They're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Emma smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in 3 years. I know, she said. And I'm not going anywhere either. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and full of possibility. Inside Emma's apartment, 2 people who had loved each other from afar finally held each other close, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The midnight call had changed everything. What followed had surprised them both, not with its intensity, but with its inevitability. Some loves, they realized, were worth the risk of losing everything else. As they watched the sun rise together, Emma and David knew that their story was just beginning. It would be a story of love and loss, of courage and consequence, of 2 hearts finally finding their way to each other despite all the obstacles in their path. And in the end, that was a story worth telling.